Hi everyone. So welcome to another talk on DataTechTalk. So this is a very exciting video because I'm excited to have a wonderful person on the show today. His name is George Firican, if I'm not mistaken. And basically I know him personally because of his awesome YouTube videos. I don't know how
Oh,
you
I
would know
appreciate
him.
it.
So basically, George is, an advocate of the importance of data. He's actually a great conference speaker as well. A YouTuber, like I mentioned, and at the same time, he's actually ranked in amongst the top 10 global thought leaders and influencers on digital disruption, and top 15 on the innovation and big data. So this is it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. You are also a proud founder of lightsondata.com. So I will ask about it a little bit further down in my interview today. But you have implemented a lot of projects around data governance, business intelligence, data analytics, and so on. So it just be invaluable to have you and your experiences to be shared with our network today. So thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and looking forward to keep learning from one another.
Right, great. So I was wondering, I was looking at your Good Data Morning show, and I was kind of wondering, like, what made you do that show? Like, what was your trigger?
There's a few pieces that come into that answer. First of all, I was really motivated by Kate Strackney, because she's been having this for a while, the LinkedIn Live, and when she found out that, hey, George has it as well, she really pushed me to, hey, come on, you need to get your face out there, you need to get your voice out there on LinkedIn too, as she knew me from, LinkedIn as well, but also YouTube. And there's definitely a different audience that can join in this, LinkedIn Live. And it's really another platform where you can hopefully inspire and teach people more about the importance of data and different aspects of it, such as the data management, data governance. Those are my sort of expertise areas. So in any way that I can do to impart some knowledge, but also inspire, business leaders to invest into this, to really do treat it as an asset. A lot of people do say, yes, we do treat data as an asset. We do think data is important. We want to be data driven, but then they're not really. Then they don't really want to invest resources into it, into their staff, into their learning. So that's part of my message into for these shows.
Awesome. So how long have you actually been working in specifically the data management, data governance space so far, and how did you manage to come into this work?
Well, it's been over 10 years now focused on the data governance, data management aspects. And when I got out of university, I just came out with a computer science major. So I worked as a programmer, front end, back end, or front end. And then I sort of transitioned into the business analysis, project management world. And that's where, obviously, as a programmer, you also work with the data. But I think as a project manager, business analyst, you tend to see a little bit more of its impact and the importance of having data quality and how different systems interact and how what really it affects the end users, products, services, whatnot. So that sort of then transitioned into this data quality world, and you can't really have good data quality without data governance. And that was sort of my progression in my career.
That's amazing. So is it correct that I assume that you started first with data quality and then you moved on to data governance, or is it like kind of like a cohesive?
That's a very good assumption, and it's really because of the name of it as well. At the time, a lot of the people at that organization, they weren't very keen on governance. They didn't really like that keyword, and I said, well, you know what? Our outcome here is to improve the data quality. Let's just focus on that instead. But in the back of my mind, and really in what I put together, what I established there as a program, it did have that data governance foundations in place. We just didn't call it as such. We didn't have a data governance council. We had a data quality council. So it's more of a name difference, but in reality, again, the best practices were from a data governance point of view. There were still those roles and responsibilities that were defined, those standards, those policies. So in a lot of sense, data governance and data quality, they work tightly together, and they're often confused because of it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I've been doing this for a few weeks, months actually now, and I've interviewed quite a few people who say exactly the same thing. Like, when it comes to data governance, you'll have to be a little bit careful about how you term it, because not everyone would understand that this is actually, a kind of a people process policy encompassing that data program itself. Um,
Right.
and and more so, when people hear the word governance, immediately they're like, who's watching me? What are you governing? So if you don't understand data governance, this is something that let's say data leaders like yourself often face, I assume. And it's part of also the change management and the learning processes as well. So one thing that I found out while I was Googling about all the awesome things that you do is that you do have a course around business glossary. So please, could you tell us more about that?
I do, and I just actually last month I released another one on data governance maturity models, and I'm just in the process on releasing a couple more on data governance foundations and really practical data governance. If one knows, all the terms and the what it is, all the theory, how they can actually put into practice in the first 6 months, 12 months, and get something beneficial out of it. So back to your first question, I really started to create these online courses mainly because as a practitioner, or I remember when I was trying to learn about all this stuff, there's no really program yet that out of university you become a data governance professional or a data management professional. A lot of people kind of fall into it. So in my learning experience, there's definitely a lot of great books out there. There's, courses and stuff, but at least to me, they still seem to be a bit dry. They're very interesting and fun topics, at least in my opinion. But the way they're delivered, it seems to be still, old school. You have the PowerPoint slide with the bullet point form. Somebody just narrates it. You can really hear that they're just reading off a script. It's just not engaging enough. And even some of the in-person ones, it's just too much, too theoretical, at least from my experience in the courses and seminars that I've been into. So I wanted to provide people something based on my experience, based on the experience of a lot of my coworkers in the industry that I've learned from as well, and their learnings into something practical, something that goes beyond the theory. Of course, the theory is important, best practices are important, but also, okay, what do you need to do to get from the A to Z, or Z? So that's what I was trying to distill a little bit of maybe life into this whole business glossary and data governance and all the other topics that I'm teaching about. Yeah, just trying to make it a little
That's
bit more
awesome.
engaging and fun and consumable and practical.
That's really awesome. But where do people go to find these amazing courses?
Well, they can go to lightsondata.com, and you can definitely see links for the two courses right now. And in the next couple of weeks, I'll have a pre-sale for the other two. Thank you for
Amazing.
asking.
So, network, please, I'll link it below, but just in case you miss it out, please listen to it again and, search for these courses, and I'm sure it'll be very, very beneficial for you. So George, in terms of, apart from courses as well, that you have, do you have any other recommendations on how people can either get into data governance or learn more about data governance and the impacts it has on the organizational data management programs?
Absolutely. Well, to pitch myself, you can definitely follow Lights on Data YouTube channel. You can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to distill as much information as I possibly can. But other than that, I do recommend to look for your DAMA chapter. They're a great organization. They have a lot of industry experts, a lot of people that can really provide practical knowledge as well. And there's a lot of chapters around the world that they have, meet and greets and webinars, seminars that you can participate into. They also have a great book, the DAMA Book of Knowledge, the DM Book, which I really recommend. It's giving a beautiful overview of all the different data management areas and data governance as well, and really what they all mean, how do they all work together. So I think it's a great introductory to data governance at least. And of course, try network. It's best to just learn from others that have gone through this, or if they're going through the same challenges right now, or even that they're at the beginning of their career, and you can just learn together from each other's experience. I also recommend this one book. There are a lot of books out there, but the one that comes to mind right away, it's the one from Robert Steiner, and it's called, what is it called? Yes, Non-Invasive Data Governance. So it's a bit of a different take. It's working on that change management piece that you were mentioning. The fact that let's not really do too many changes. Let's try and work with what we have in our organization and see how can we make people realize that they actually do quite a bit of data stewardship already. They just don't know it. And how can we then formalize some data governance concepts just to have it a bit more structured than it is right now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think I'm having some network issues. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay.
All right, good. Sorry, I had some network issues here. So thanks for that. It's very useful information, and the books I'll try to write them down when I post this as well as a link to your site. But in your view, what makes a good data governance program?
I would say that at least 80% of it is that change management, that communication piece. And I feel that so many organizations are really failing on that. They dedicate so many resources and effort, and rightfully so, on creating the policies, on creating that council, or coming up with the metrics, the procedures, the standards, which is something that you do need to have. Some of the tools, of course. But then if you don't bring in the audience, the stakeholders from the start to be part of that journey, and it's something that you're working, in an office, somewhere on the side that people are not really aware of, and then you're really hitting them on the head at the end that, hey, we've done all of this, now adopt it, they'll really be reticent to do so. They will be adverse to it. It'll be harder to get them on board. So I think it needs to be a partnership with the business, with IT from the start. And that's where I find they're really lacking. I think there's not such a thing as too much communication when it comes to data governance. I think everybody needs to communicate what they're going to do, what they are doing, and what has been done. And at the same time, not just to talk about, data governance, data, but also relate and connect all of these to, well, what's in it for you? At the at the business unit level, at the individual level, department, and all the way to the organizational level. What's the impact? How does it relate to those business goals? And so that's my recommendation. And I feel a lot of organizations, again, are falling short on this one. They don't, maybe they understand its importance, but not so much that they dedicate a lot more time to it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I'm even now, after so many years in data governance space, I'm very surprised on, whenever IT team comes up with data governance, and I'm like, that's fair enough, but where is your business? Do you know your business goals? And why are you doing data governance? Is it to manage your metadata? Then do, something like master data management or something like that. But
Correct.
If you're doing data governance, you have to involve the business together with the IT team, and that's absolutely totally 100% agree.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, it's not an IT function, right? It's a business function. And probably because it has data in the name there, data governance, it's why sometimes it does fall under IT. But you're completely right. It's so much more business than IT. IT is definitely the partnership, but they shouldn't be leading this.
And I also remember in the early days where Europe was starting to understand the term data governance in general. I remember there was a lot of a lot of back and forth with our IT teams of different customers saying, "Yeah, we should be the one to drive this because we are IT. It's a technology you're selling. Yes, we're selling technology for your enablement, but not necessarily for the goal that you're trying to bring. The goal is the business value."
Well
But
said.
apart from that, I've also seen a lot of conflicts when we talk about data governance programs within a specific, type of group or companies. Like maybe in a particular organization, the IT group has a specific type of agenda to push through, whereas some of the business groups have another type. Um, how do you handle these kind of possible organizational conflicts from overlapping functions, for example, when dealing with data and when dealing maybe with also data governance?
Well, that's why it's good and always recommended to have that data governance council that's higher up. So part of it, you would have the sponsors. Ideally, you have more than one sponsor for the program because then you would have more support that's guaranteed. So obviously, if there's any concerns, any discussions that are in disagreement, then all the C-level or the sponsors can come in and jump in and help, sort of maybe veto some situations. But that's why it's good to have that council in order to have these conversations and for these individuals to see the other side of the story as well, because more often they're only looking at it from their perspective. And I think just putting people in a room to understand the view as a whole, because I mean, in a way, everybody wants for the organization just to go well, right? So I think when they see everything in perspective and from each other's perspective, it does open up that room for conversation and more collaboration.
Well said. I love that. So, in terms of, the recent situation that's going on, the pandemic that's going on, how do you think your industry, in terms of educational industry, or how in general have they been affected, and what do you see going ahead?
Well, in terms of the data industry as a whole, I would say that in a way it progressed quite a few things. The whole digitalization, it moved it a step higher because everything needs to be online, or a lot more things need to be online now. So processes that were still on paper, now they had to be digitized. And of course, with this, there's different data flows and different data management aspects to it. So in a way, it has been beneficial for that. It really pushed it quite a bit, stepped it out quite a bit more. In terms of the education piece, it's challenging still. I know, so I work at the University of British Columbia as my day job, if you will. And it's definitely challenging because now there's a different shift between the in-class teaching to online teaching. And yes, it's still valuable or as valuable, but you don't benefit from the same interaction with the colleagues, with the teachers. And regardless of how great those tools are, I think we're really lacking that human interaction. And especially in these formative years, I think it's crucial. And I'm hoping that we'll find a solution to not lose our, let's say, humanity in a way.
Wow, that's really thought-provoking. I had goosebumps when you say that because that in a way we do see that happening a little bit, going forward. When people go back to absolute normalcy, how long will it be? We don't know yet. And there's quite a few changes, lifestyle changes that people had to do, work-related changes, the remote working, for example, in, I know like Google employees, for example, they are allowed to work remotely until next year, and or heard that maybe I'm.
Yeah, no, and there are organizations that said indefinitely it's going to be work from home going forward. Yeah.
So that's yeah, but I don't want to end on a negative note. So I do want to end on a positive note. And I would love to ask you a little bit about, maybe a funny incident that happened during your data governance or data management programs, or maybe a memory, a challenging memory that you're really proud of. So if you have a story like that, do share with us.
And there's definitely a lot of great successes. I mean, in the end, most does end with a successful story. But the piece that comes in mind, I remember when they were doing this data conversion at one point, and they were moving from one financial management system into a new one, and I won't mention the company. But in this conversion, they actually found out this one record, this one employee that they had that was, still getting salary, though money wasn't transferred anywhere. And I'll tell you in a second why. They had a cell phone assigned to them, an employee number and so forth. And their name was Fred Flintstone, believe it or not. And it ended up that it was sort of this artifact that was kept behind from when they've initially developed that system in-house. And they've added a bunch of testing records in there to make sure that everything works. And Fred Flintstone still lived, about 10 years or so since they had that system, and nobody bothered to actually check and see that money was actually being put aside from their budget for this employee that was never cashing those checks. So it was great finding because they were able to save quite a bit of money. I'm also baffled of how it really went uncovered, but that's another reason, an example of the fact that they did not have a data governance program and they didn't have processes to do these checks and audits in place. But it was really, really funny just finding out that name in there. And we kind of looked at each other a few seconds before we went into it a bit further, and we were really wondering, is there really somebody named Fred Flintstone at the organization? But so that was definitely a red flag, and it was give us a chuckle.
That's absolutely funny. And when I was a child, I was a big fan. Actually, that doesn't, that kind of gives away my age. But what I was saying is, when you have Fred Flintstone, Flintstones, or when you have John Does and stuff like that, these are, the kind of data quality issues, the null values, for example. These are always something that worries, DQ related data.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And hey,
And
Hanna-Barbera cartoons, they're still, they're a classic, but they're still great to watch even today.
they are, I know. And, whenever I see something on Cartoon Network similar to that, I just jump right in and then,
I miss it. Yeah, I miss Tom and Jerry and yeah, Wacky Races. I think I
All
would still
right.
watch them.
I definitely still watch Tom and Jerry. So whenever there's a downtime for me, I jump right in. But I hope the Fred Flintstones do live forever. Not maybe not in the
Not
database,
in the
but
database, yeah.
in reality for sure. But with that note, I do want to thank you so much for joining us today in this series episode. And thank you so much for all the work that you do related to data management, related to teaching the world about different kinds of data related courses as well, and for your show as well. I'll definitely watch it. I definitely keep watching it. And
Thank you.
yeah, please let me know if I can do anything for you as well. And for my network, thank you for watching. And there'll be more coming up next week. So stay tuned.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.